Before you check your phone, before you scroll messages, before the noise of the world dictates your worth, stop. Breathe. Listen. How you start the morning shapes the day. In Psalm 142, David cries out from a cave, overwhelmed, cornered, lonely. He does not wait to be strong. He pours out his heart to God. That is the first lesson. God does not require perfection. He invites honesty. Many wake stressed, anxious, carrying yesterday into today. Here's the shocking truth. If you do not release your burdens to God, you will release frustration on people. Suppressed emotions become misplaced anger, silent anxiety, emotional heaviness. Education shows bottling emotions harms mental and physical health. Psalm 142 teaches therapy through prayer. Cry, speak, release. David says, I pour out my complaint before him. Not polite words, not rehearsed phrases, raw honesty. Morning is sacred because it's quiet. What you do in that quiet sets the tone for your confidence. Before coffee, conversation, confrontation, go to God. Social media breeds comparison. News breeds fear. Emails breed pressure. God breeds peace. David's cave was dark, yet his voice lifted. That is the key. Verbalizing fears reduces their power. Neuroscience confirms naming emotions calms stress. Prayer adds divine power. God designed it for you. Prayer organizes thoughts, clears clutter, reminds you that control is not yours alone. David says, when my spirit grows faint, you know my way. Before you solve it, God sees it. Why carry what heaven is willing to hold? Some wake overwhelmed by bills, children, discouragement, loneliness. Motivation. If David prayed in a cave, you can pray in your bedroom. If David cried under pursuit, you can cry in your quiet hour. Do not sanitize prayer. Do not shrink your emotions. Do not edit pain. Pour it out. When you do, God pours peace in. Start the day honest, raw, unfiltered. This moment is transformation. Prayer changes you before circumstances change. Today, choose honesty over hiding, surrender over stress, prayer over pressure. Walk lighter. Amen. Morning prayer with Psalm 142. When you feel alone, God is your refuge. Key point: twinning. God sees you even when others don't. Good morning. Let me begin with a question that may shake you. What do you do when you feel invisible? Not physically invisible, but emotionally unseen, spiritually unnoticed, socially overlooked. In Psalm 142, David makes a painful statement. Look to my right and see, no one is concerned for me. I have no refuge, no one cares for my soul. That is not poetic exaggeration. That is raw loneliness. That is the cry of someone who feels abandoned. And here is what makes it shocking. This is David, the future king, the giant killer, the anointed one. Yet in this moment, he feels unseen. So if you have ever felt overlooked, dismissed, forgotten, or undervalued, you are not weak, you are human. Education teaches us something powerful about this feeling. Studies in psychology show that social rejection activates the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. In other words, being ignored can hurt like a broken bone. Being unseen can wound like a visible scar. That is why loneliness feels heavy. That is why rejection feels sharp. But here is the turning point of Psalm 432. Though David says no one cares for his soul, he continues praying. Why? Because even when people did not see him, God did. And that changes everything. Let this truth shock you this morning. Human recognition is optional. Divine awareness is constant. You may not get applause. You may not get credit. You may not get acknowledgement. But you are never unseen by God. The danger of feeling invisible is that you start shrinking yourself. You stop speaking up. You stop trying. You stop believing your presence matters. You walk into rooms already assuming nobody notices. But Psalm 142 educates us spiritually. God's sight is not dependent on human spotlight. David was in a cave, not a palace. There was no audience, no army, no praise, just darkness and isolation. Yet heaven was fully attentive. Imagine that. In a hidden cave, the creator of the universe was listening carefully. That means your hidden tears are seen. Your silent prayers are heard. Your private struggles are recorded. You are not ignored. You are observed by a loving God. Now here is the motivational shift. When you understand that God sees you, you stop performing for people. Many people exhaust themselves trying to be validated. They chase likes. They chase compliments. They chase approval. But validation is a moving target. People clap today and criticize tomorrow. People celebrate you when you succeed and disappear when you struggle. If your worth depends on human attention, your confidence will collapse under human neglect. David could have broken in that cave. He could have said, "No one cares, so why should I continue?" But instead, he redirected his focus upward. Education teaches that attention shapes identity. What you focus on defines how you feel. If you focus on who ignored you, you feel rejected. If you focus on who sees you, you feel valued. David shifted his awareness from human absence to divine presence. That is maturity. That is spiritual intelligence. Let this sink in. God's awareness of you is detailed. He sees the effort nobody thanked you for. He sees the sacrifice nobody recognized. He sees the discipline nobody applauded. He sees the tears you wiped away before anyone entered the room. And here is the shocking part. He values what others overlook. The world measures visibility by platform. God measures visibility by faithfulness. The world celebrates popularity. God honors perseverance. The world notices noise. God notices endurance. So when you wake up feeling unseen, do not interpret silence as insignificance. Sometimes God hides you before he elevates you. David's cave was not a cancellation, it was preparation. Isolation often develops depth. When you are unseen by people, you are often being shaped by God. Think about this. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. No one applauds a seed in the soil. It looks buried. It looks forgotten. But beneath the surface, transformation is happening. If you feel buried, you may actually be planted. That is not motivational hype. That is spiritual law. God often develops character in hidden seasons. And here is an educational truth about human behavior. When people overlook you, it often reveals their limitation, not your value. Some people cannot see your worth because they are distracted by their own insecurity. Some cannot celebrate you because they are competing internally. Some overlook you because they are not assigned to recognize you. Stop expecting permanent validation from temporary observers. Instead, anchor your identity in the one who never blinks, never sleeps, never misses a detail. David said no one cares for his soul, but he kept speaking to God. Why? Because he knew someone was listening. You may walk into work today and no one thanks you. You may serve your family and no one acknowledges you. You may be doing your best and still feel unnoticed. But hear this clearly, you are fully seen. God sees your integrity. God sees your restraint. God sees your obedience. And what God sees, God sustains. When you internalize this truth, you become dangerous in a good way. You stop begging for attention. You stop shrinking for acceptance. You stop over-explaining your worth. You walk with quiet confidence because you know heaven is watching. That confidence changes posture. It changes tone. It changes decisions. Instead of saying, "Nobody notices me," you begin saying, "God sees me." And that single shift can heal deep insecurity. So this morning, before insecurity speaks, let truth speak louder. Before comparison whispers, let conviction answer. Before loneliness defines you, Let divine awareness stabilize you. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked in heaven. If David could declare hope in a cave, you can declare confidence in your circumstance. Stand up today knowing this. Even if your phone is silent, heaven is attentive. Even if the room ignores you, God acknowledges you. Even if people underestimate you, God understands you. Walk into this day not desperate to be seen, but secure in the fact that you already are. And when you live from that awareness, loneliness loses its power, insecurity loses its grip, and your spirit stands tall. God sees you. That is enough. Let me say something that may shock you this morning. Just because you are alone right now does not mean you are abandoned forever. In Psalm 142, David is not sitting on a throne. He is hiding in a cave. A cave is dark. A cave is isolated. A cave echoes your fears back to you. And some of you are in a cave season right now. Not a physical cave, but an emotional one. A relational one. A financial one. A spiritual one. You feel cut off. You feel delayed. You feel disconnected from the life you thought you would be living by now. But here is the truth that changes everything. Caves are temporary. They are not permanent addresses. They are transitional spaces. David's cave was not his destiny. It was his development. Education teaches us that seasons are essential for growth. In agriculture, there are planting seasons, waiting seasons, and harvesting seasons. No farmer panics during planting season because there is no fruit on the tree. They understand process. But many people spiritually panic because they mistake a process for a punishment. They assume isolation means failure. They assume delay means denial. They assume loneliness means rejection. But what if your cave is actually construction? What if God is building strength in silence? David's loneliness sharpened him. It deepened his prayer life. It strengthened his dependence. It stripped away distractions. Isolation has a way of exposing what noise hides. When you are alone, you see yourself clearly. You confront your fears honestly. You discover whether your confidence was in applause or in God. And here is the shocking truth. Some levels of elevation require seasons of isolation. If David had become king without the cave, he might have been crowned without character. And success without character is dangerous. Many people want public victories, but resist private preparation. They want platforms but avoid process. They want crowns but reject caves. But caves develop endurance. Education in psychology shows that resilience is not built during comfort. It is built during controlled adversity. Muscles grow by resistance. Character grows by pressure. Faith grows by uncertainty. If everything in your life was comfortable, you would never grow. So instead of asking, "Why am I alone?" ask, "What is this season producing in me?" Loneliness can teach self-awareness. It can teach emotional independence. It can teach you how to hear God without distraction. David learned to worship in a cave. That means your environment does not have to match your destiny. You can be in a low place and still carry high purpose. You can be surrounded by silence and still have divine assignment. The cave did not cancel David, it clarified him. Some of you are in a season where friendships have shifted. Opportunities have slowed. Doors have closed. And it feels like life has narrowed. But narrowing is not necessarily punishment. It can be protection. When a river narrows, it flows stronger. When your circle gets smaller, your focus gets sharper. Stop interpreting isolation as insignificance. Sometimes God removes noise so you can hear direction. David thought he was hiding from enemies, but God was shaping a king. And here is something educational that will challenge your mindset. The brain often interprets temporary discomfort as permanent reality. When you are in a hard season, your mind says, "This is how it will always be." But that is cognitive distortion. Seasons change, emotions fluctuate, circumstances evolve. History proves that no storm lasts forever. Winter does not cancel spring. Night does not cancel morning. A cave does not cancel a calling. If David had judged his future by his cave, he would have lost hope. But he kept praying. He kept believing. He kept declaring that God was his refuge. And eventually, the cave became a testimony, not a tomb. That is what this season will become for you, a testimony. One day you will say, "I was alone, but I was growing. I was hidden, but I was healing. I was delayed, but I was developing." And here is the shocking reversal. The same loneliness that feels heavy now will become the strength you rely on later. Because when you learn to stand alone with God, you are never desperate for people. Desperation leads to wrong attachments. Growth leads to discernment. Some relationships had to fall away so your identity could stand up. Some distractions had to disappear so your discipline could increase. Some comforts had to be removed so your calling could mature. The cave is not your sentence. It is your school. And every school has a graduation date. You may not know when this season shifts, but you can know this: it will shift. David did not die in the cave. He walked out prepared, and you will walk out stronger than you entered. So this morning, change your language. Stop saying, "I'm stuck." Start saying, "I'm being shaped." Stop saying, "I'm forgotten." Start saying, "I'm being formed." Stop saying, "This is the end." Start saying, "This is preparation." Because loneliness is a season, not a life sentence. And seasons have assignments. Ask yourself, what habits am I building in this season? What discipline is forming in me? What clarity is emerging? Growth rarely feels glamorous. It often feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is evidence of transformation. When a caterpillar enters a cocoon, it looks inactive. But inside, change is happening at a cellular level. If someone judged the cocoon, they would call it confinement. But it is actually metamorphosis. Your cave may look like confinement, but it is transformation. You are not trapped, you are transitioning. And when this season ends, and it will end, you will not be the same person who entered it. You will be stronger, wiser, more grounded, more discerning, more spiritually mature. So lift your head this morning. The cave is not your coffin, it is your classroom. Loneliness is not your identity, it is your interval. And intervals end. Trust the process. Trust the preparation. Trust that God wastes nothing. If He allowed the season, He has already planned the exit. And when you walk out, you will realize something powerful. The cave did not break you, it built you. Let me be brutally honest, the world will never be a safe place. The people around you will fail you. The systems you depend on will disappoint you. Even your closest friends may not fully understand your struggles. Life can feel like a storm without warning, a battlefield without protection, a desert without water. And here is the shocking truth. If your security is in anything other than God, you are living on borrowed confidence. In Psalm 142, David declares, "You are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living." A refuge is not just shelter. It is protection. It is defense. It is a stronghold that the enemy cannot penetrate. And David in his cave understands something most of us overlook. Your refuge must be stronger than your fears, not your circumstances. Education teaches us that humans naturally seek safety, but often in the wrong places. Many people build emotional refuges on relationships, possessions, titles, or reputation. They invest in temporary shelters that crumble when pressure comes. Your job may protect your finances, but it cannot protect your soul. Your popularity may protect your ego, but it cannot protect your heart. Only God can. Declaring God as your refuge is not just poetic. It is practical. It rewires your mind and strengthens your spirit. Psychologists call this locus of control, where you anchor your security. Most people anchor it externally. They rely on people, outcomes, luck. Anchoring in God is internal and eternal. It gives you stability when chaos surrounds you. Let me shock you further. Storms are inevitable. Trials are unavoidable. Betrayals are certain. Pain is universal. And if you do not have a refuge, these forces will crush you. But declaring God as your refuge is like planting a fortress in your soul that no hurricane can topple. David says, "You are my portion in the land of the living." That is powerful language. Portion means inheritance, sustenance, identity. He is saying, "My security is not what I see around me. It is what I receive from you." Many of us spend life chasing scraps of comfort, approval, and safety. We look to people for refuge and find disappointment. We look to wealth for refuge and find anxiety. We look to knowledge for refuge and find confusion. But when you declare God as your refuge, you are tapping into the ultimate source of safety, wisdom, and provision. Here is an educational insight: human beings need a psychological safe place to thrive. If you constantly live in fear of attack, criticism, or failure, your brain remains in stress mode. But faith in a refuge beyond the visible reduces stress hormones, improves decision-making, and fosters courage. Spiritual declaration is neuroscience in action. Your mind believes what your heart declares. So when David declared God as his refuge, he was not only speaking spiritually, he was activating courage biologically, emotionally, and mentally. That is how prayer transforms fear into fortitude. Let me be even more shocking: the world may betray you. People may fail you. Circumstances may abandon you, but God never changes. Your refuge is immovable. Mountains may shake, rivers may overflow, storms may rage, but your stronghold remains. And here is something you need to hear today: God is not a last resort. He is not a backup plan. He is your first line of defense. If you call him after desperation, you are already behind. If you call him after fear, you are already weakened. Declare him first, and the storm loses its power before it hits. Education teaches that proactive preparation is always better than reactive response. Anchoring your heart in God before crisis is strategic. Waiting until chaos is reactive. David declares his refuge before calamity defeats him. That is wisdom. That is education. That is life-changing strategy. Another shocking truth: declaring God as your refuge requires action. It is not a passive statement. It is an active choice to trust, obey, and depend. It means when fear whispers, "You cannot survive," you respond, "God is my refuge." When anxiety says, "You are alone," you respond, "God is my refuge." When uncertainty screams, "You are unprepared," you respond, "God is my refuge." Declaration becomes armor. Words become weapons. Faith becomes shield. And here is the final shock: your refuge is not just for protection. It is for identity. David calls God his portion in the land of the living. That means his life's meaning, his strength, and his purpose are rooted in God. Your refuge shapes your values, decisions, and destiny. When you anchor your identity in God, the opinions of people lose their weight. When you declare God as your refuge, the storms of life cannot define you. When you claim him as your fortress, your failures cannot confine you. Your isolation cannot intimidate you. Your losses cannot eliminate you. So this morning I challenge you: stop looking for protection in things that fail. Stop seeking refuge in places that crumble. Stop depending on people who may leave. Declare God as your refuge. Speak it. Pray it. Believe it. Let it become the lens through which you see your life. And watch what happens. Fear will flee, courage will rise, hope will awaken, and your steps will be firm even in chaos. David walked out of his cave. He walked into battle's kingship and destiny with a heart fortified by the God he declared as his refuge. You, too, can walk into your day with that same assurance. Do not just whisper it in prayer. Live it in action. Let every thought, every decision, every step reflect that your refuge is not in circumstances, not in approval, not in possessions, but in God. That is power. That is education. That is life transformed. God is your refuge. Say it, believe it, live it, and nothing, not loneliness, not fear, not failure, can ever take that away from you. Let me start by saying something that might shock you. Weakness is not a flaw. Weakness is not a failure. Weakness is not a sentence, it is a signal. In Psalm 142, David begins his prayer in despair. He is hunted, cornered, overwhelmed. His spirit grows faint. His enemies loom. Yet he opens his mouth to God. That act of prayer transforms everything. Here is the first shocking truth: your weakness is the gateway to your strength. Modern society tells us to hide weakness, to mask pain, to appear invincible. Social media glorifies perfection. Culture demands performance. But hiding weakness only prolongs struggle. Education shows that acknowledging vulnerability actually builds resilience. Psychologists call it self-disclosure. Naming your fear decreases its power. Speaking your stress reduces its grip. Opening your heart activates coping mechanisms. And here is where prayer takes it a step further. Spiritual mechanics outperform human psychology. When you verbalize weakness before God, you are not just releasing emotions, you are releasing control. That is shocking. Weakness is transformed the moment you surrender it. David prayed not after he had strength. He prayed because he had none. And that is the pattern for divine empowerment. God does not give strength to the strong. He gives strength to the willing, the desperate, the open. Weakness is the invitation. Prayer is the response. The combination creates power. Many people want miracles without admitting limitation. They want breakthrough without confession. They want victory without vulnerability. But Psalm 142 teaches differently. Transformation begins where strength ends. Let me be blunt: if you refuse to admit your weakness, you refuse the power God wants to pour into you. If you refuse to pray from your desperate place, you refuse the supernatural solution designed for your helpless moment. Education confirms this principle. When humans confront challenges alone, stress overwhelms, cortisol rises, decision-making declines, resilience wanes. But when humans pray, especially with total honesty, stress hormones drop, clarity increases, confidence rises. Prayer rewires your mind and aligns it with divine perspective. That is not theory. That is tested in scripture and science alike. David's cave is a living example. Alone, hunted, faint in spirit, yet his voice lifted to heaven. That act changed the course of his life. Prayer transformed his weakness into strategy. It transformed despair into faith. It transformed hiding into preparation. And that is the shocking reality. Your weakness can become your weapon if you learn to pray from it. Consider this: the strongest leaders, the most influential figures, the most resilient individuals in history, all experienced weakness. They felt fear, inadequacy, and doubt. What separated them was not the absence of weakness, it was their refusal to remain powerless in it. Prayer is the engine that converts raw vulnerability into unstoppable strength. Now let's talk about the educational side, neurologically. When you pray, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for reasoning and decision-making, activates more effectively. That means your brain begins solving problems more clearly while your spirit aligns with God's plan. In short, prayer is not passive. It trains the mind and strengthens the heart simultaneously. That is shocking to anyone who thinks prayer is just saying words. Prayer is active transformation. And here's another truth that will hit hard: your weakness is strategic. God does not waste hardship. Your desperation, your faint spirit, your low point, these are not accidents. They are assignments. Weakness forces you to seek divine power. Weakness teaches you humility. Weakness cultivates patience. Weakness reveals your dependence on the one who can actually change your story. David knew this. That is why, even in the depth of despair, he prayed. And here is the motivation you need today. If you pray in weakness, you will not stay weak. Your tears will water your strength. Your confessions will build courage. Your cries will generate clarity. That is shocking because it flips the world's logic upside down. The world says, be strong first, then God will help you. God says, bring your weakness first, then I will make you strong. Do not wait to feel capable. Do not wait to feel ready. Do not wait to feel perfect. Prayer works best in the cracks, the voids, the caves of your life. The very moment you admit, I cannot do this alone, is the moment divine power begins to flow. And here is a psychological insight: when you verbalize weakness, you activate accountability within yourself. You recognize limits, identify needs, and clarify priorities. Prayer amplifies that effect. It transforms emotional chaos into strategic action. Your weakness becomes a blueprint for growth. Another shocking point: prayer in weakness produces endurance. Life will hit you. People will betray you. Circumstances will overwhelm you. But if your weakness becomes the seedbed for prayer, no storm can permanently defeat you. You will endure because you are anchored beyond yourself. David did not pray and remain static. He prayed and moved. His cave was temporary. His enemies were eventually confronted. His destiny unfolded. That is your pattern too. Finally, the ultimate shocker: weakness is not the enemy. Fear is not the enemy. Failure is not the enemy. The real enemy is pride masquerading as strength. People avoid admitting weakness, fearing judgment. That is the trap. The true power comes when you face reality honestly and lift it to God. That is how prayer transforms weakness into strength. So this morning, declare it aloud: Lord, I am weak. I am afraid. I am overwhelmed. But you are my strength. You are my refuge. You will carry me. You will equip me. You will empower me. Speak it. Mean it. Believe it. Live it. And watch what happens. Despair turns into courage. Doubt turns into strategy. Limitation turns into leverage. And weakness turns into unstoppable strength. The cave you are in today will become the platform you rise from tomorrow. Because prayer never leaves you where it found you. Let me hit you with a truth that may shock you. The way you start the day determines the way your life unfolds. Fear in the morning multiplies by noon. Anxiety before sunrise dictates your decisions all day. Doubt at dawn infects every action, every word, every relationship. Psalm 142 gives us a model for a different approach. David, alone in a cave, hunted, faint in spirit, does not end his prayer in despair. He ends it with expectation. That is the first shocking principle. You can be desperate and hopeful at the same time. The world teaches us to separate hope from reality, to wait until circumstances improve before expecting good. David did the opposite. Education supports this. Neuroscience shows that expectation rewires the brain. Anticipating positive outcomes stimulates the prefrontal cortex, improves problem solving and increases resilience. In other words, Your brain physically prepares you for breakthrough when your heart believes it is coming. David declared hope while in a low place. That is shocking because it defies logic. The cave did not scream victory, yet his spirit anticipated deliverance. Let me break this down for you. Fear looks at the present and exaggerates threats. Doubt measures you against others and finds you lacking. Anxiety inflates challenges and shrinks possibilities. But expectation, faith-driven expectation, looks beyond circumstances to divine intervention. It is seeing your breakthrough before it arrives. That is the power of ending your morning with expectation. If you wake up focused on obstacles, you attract more obstacles. If you wake up focused on failure, you invite more failure. But if you wake up expecting God's guidance, provision, and protection, you align yourself with solutions and opportunities. Education confirms this cognitive framing matters. People who visualize success, gratitude, and progress are statistically more likely to achieve it. David modeled this spiritual principle centuries before psychology explained it. He prayed and expected, not because the cave was comfortable, but because his God is faithful. Now, here is a truth that shocks most believers. Expectation is a choice, not a feeling. You may not feel ready. You may not feel secure. You may not feel supported. That is irrelevant. You declare expectation because your faith is anchored, not your circumstances. Many people wait to feel hope before acting. That is backward. Faith-based expectation flips the logic. You act and speak as if breakthrough is inevitable, and it shapes reality. David exemplifies this. He did not wait until his enemies were gone to declare freedom. He declared refuge, provision, and guidance in the middle of the cave. That is a principle you must embrace today. Expectation is active, not passive. It is not daydreaming. It is strategic alignment. Education in leadership shows that leaders who set expectation attract resources, cooperation, and momentum. Those who dwell in fear repel opportunities. Spiritually, this is identical. Expectation pulls blessings toward you. Fear pushes them away. Another shocking point, ending your morning with expectation protects your heart from despair. Despair is sneaky. It creeps in unnoticed. It whispers lies. Nothing will change. You are alone. You are powerless. But expectation is louder. Expectation trains your mind to focus on possibilities, not problems. Expectation trains your emotions to trust before you see. Expectation trains your spirit to align with God before the evidence appears. If David had ended in fear, he might have remained trapped in hopelessness, emotionally crushed, spiritually paralyzed. But he ended with expectation, and that expectation carried him forward. Your expectation is prophetic. It speaks to your day. It informs your decisions. It shapes your energy. Ending your morning with expectation is like programming your life for breakthrough. Let me shock you even further. Your expectation can influence people around you. Confidence, faith, and hope are contagious. When you project expectation, solutions, support, and favor begin to converge toward you. People rise to the energy you carry. Circumstances bend toward your vision. This is why ending your morning with fear is dangerous. Fear does not just affect you, it infects your environment. Expectation transforms weakness into influence. Expectation transforms pressure into opportunity. Expectation transforms isolation into connection. And here is a final educational insight. Expectation without action is incomplete, but action without expectation is powerless. David prayed, prepared, and persisted. He expected God to deliver. He took steps toward survival. Expectation fuels courage. Expectation fuels perseverance. Expectation fuels clarity. It is not naive, it is strategic. So today, refuse to begin your day in panic. Refuse to begin your day in worry. Refuse to begin your day anchored in what is missing or broken. Begin anchored in what is promised. Anchor in God as your refuge, as your portion, as your strength, as your guide. Begin expecting His provision, guidance, and breakthrough. Speak it aloud. Declare it. Visualize it. Write it down. Let your mind, heart, and spirit align with the expectation of victory. And here is the shocker: even if circumstances do not immediately change, expectation changes you. It shapes your courage, sharpens your focus, and strengthens your resilience. The cave may remain dark for now, but your spirit will shine with hope. Your path may be uncertain, but your steps will be guided. Your enemies may linger, but your faith will overpower fear. David walked out of his cave not because the darkness changed, but because his expectation activated divine strategy, courage, and strength. That is your model. The morning is a choice. You can wake in fear or expectation. Fear attracts anxiety, indecision, and defeat. Expectation attracts faith, courage, and breakthrough. Education supports this. The way you start your day predicts 70% of your emotional, psychological, and spiritual outcomes. Do not waste this critical window. End your morning in expectation. Begin your conversations, work, and prayers believing that God is active, present, and working in your life. Even in isolation, even in uncertainty, even in fear, expectation changes the trajectory of your day. So stand now, breathe, and declare, Lord, I expect your guidance. I expect your provision. I expect your protection. I expect breakthrough. I expect joy. I expect clarity. I expect favor. I expect strength. I expect victory. I may be alone, but you are my refuge. I may feel weak, but you are my power. I may face challenges, but you are my strategy. I may see no way, but you are my way. I expect it, I believe it. I declare it, and I will act in faith. That is not wishful thinking. That is active spiritual alignment. That is practical education. That is life-changing power. End your morning with expectation, not fear, and watch what happens. Obstacles shrink, courage rises, faith strengthens, and your life moves in the direction you have declared. David's cave became his classroom, his refuge became his strategy, and his expectation became his victory. Let it become yours today.